Hello, welcome to another episode of the Crypto Spenther Podcast, episode 10. Just a few moments ago, I was dying because this mic was messing up. But it wasn't the mic, it turned out. It was just Audacity settings just screwed up and I had to reconfigure everything. So at first it was some kind of weird left-right difference going on. But I'm not settling for that kind of quality. Mainly because if there was a big difference between the left side of my ear and the right side, audio wise, that'd drive me up the wall, and I couldn't do that to you guys either. If I would definitely hate it. So, just a little side note. So, into the news. And by news, I mean CoinWatch, because that's the first segment. Alright, CoinWatch is going to be slacking for a while. I'm busy with other things, but I'm not too busy to at least look at the coins. And from the looks of it, everything's in general still kind of died down. The boom's over. Bitcoin's still doing its little yo-yo thing. It's average stuff. But going up mainly. Ether's kind of sinking slowly. Litecoin's also sinking slowly. Ubic's kind of doing its own thing. Sometimes it's kind of rising, sometimes it's falling. It's relatively stable in comparison to a lot of other things right now. DGB is still on its amazing downfall. That's terrible to enjoy, but it's also just like I said last time, I think it just greatly displays how fast a coin can rise and fall. It's its fall from grace. Then Waves is kind of surprisingly low, considering it had news about collaborating with a pretty big corporation. So I don't know. I guess shouldn't be too surprised that didn't have too big of an effect, but long term it should. But for now, it didn't really do anything. Arc is doing well compared to the rest of these, but that's not saying much. And then ICN. It's not doing that well. It's just pretty average. It's just average for what we're in right now. This is a little downward slope, mainly. So that was a quick little CoinWatch segment. Maybe in the future, or maybe if something came out of this, I'd be more in debt. No, not more in debt, more in depth. But for now, take what you can get, because the news is where I'm concentrating on. And speaking of news that you definitely want to hear is 4K Bitcoin prediction from a top-notch financial firm. 4K is a very lofty goal. Now that we hit 3, well, I don't even think we hit 3. We were pretty close to hitting 3 and it just died. But 4K, the question is when, not if though. Will we see it this year? I think it's a high possibility that we'll see 4K this year. But who knows? But last week's, not last week, but last time's news segment, the $5 trillion market cap that was estimated by some random economist. It's these things are always a question of not if but when. And just like with that retarded market cap, this thing, it'll happen, but I think it'll happen later this year, but definitely don't expect it to maintain that. I think once we hit 4K, we'll see a price selling down, it'll shoot down heavy like it did when we reached 3K, but it'll shoot down to that lower 3K to higher 2K range, and then it'll slowly creep back up to 4K. I feel like Bitcoin can't maintain the highest point estimate for very long. It gets there and it just blows off everything and dies. We'll see. Next up, Bitcoin's growth to Litecoin's growth. I've noticed that Litecoin, and I'm sure you have too, that Litecoin has pretty much gone $12 more. It was like sitting in the 40s last time I checked, and now it's in the 50s. It's really trying hard to be that silver of Bitcoin, even if Ethereum kind of stole that role a little bit. But we'll see. I definitely foresee like $100 Litecoin eventually, but anytime soon, I don't think so. I think $100 is like the lofty ultimate goal of Litecoin, but we'll see. I'm sure people thought the same with Bitcoin, and then that surpassed expectations. It's just with Litecoin is there's not really reasons to use it specifically when there's a million newer coins, or people are just going to use Bitcoin. It's just kind of like an alternative to go toward when everything else is just in the dumps. Well, that's just my opinion. Alright, next up, ICOs. And usually, I won't talk about ICOs unless it's one of the topics which is a very, very successful one, or one that is kind of just interesting. There's a lot of scams around, but if this one is a scam, I wouldn't even care because it's just kind of funny to me. It's the Eros ICO, which touts the name Backpage 3.0, like the nickname of that. Which this whole concept is blew my mind once I read about it. That it wants to be the back page of cryptocurrency and is also an ICO. To me, that's like the biggest federal like arrest waiting to happen. Just it seems like the biggest federal mess. And I know it's gonna be like a big federal mess, considering like their demo images had United States on it for like the Backpage girls. And I know some people will say, well, they're not directly escorts or prostitutes, but it's implied, and that implication was enough to like shut down the original Backpage. So good luck to them. I think it's gonna be a big train wreck, and a good train wreck to watch, but we'll see. If they maintain a more presence in not America, they'll probably be fine. Alright. And next ICO is the Tezo ICO, which is basically Ethereum's rival for the future, because they're making their own smart contracts to use. But this time, instead of a skinny Russian kid, it's two people with pretty high tier financial credibilities. One was dealing with the high frequency trading on Wall Street, and the other was with the hedge fund. It was like a husband and wife team. And if the cryptocurrency world gets like some crazy rhetoric spill over, like the crazy Russia versus America rhetoric spill over into it, you can bet these two are going to be like the mascots for the American solution to the smart contract. We'll just have to see kind of how this develops, but I think this is going to be a very successful project overall, and considering these people's like highly big corporation background, they will definitely have the confidence of like the big money to invest behind them once it gets even further along. So definitely watch out for this Tezo smart contract. It has immense potential. And speaking of contracts, not really, but speaking of backgrounds and identification, let's go on to the anticipated segment, how to spot scams. And I really want to talk about this because, like I said last time, there's a lot of people falling for stuff that sometimes they shouldn't be falling for, and sometimes they're just unlucky and end up in a bad situation. So I'm going to go through 5 easy steps to throw up red flags. So next time you'll see something and you'll think of these 5 steps and think, this thing has violated 3 of those 5 steps. I think this is a scam. And then you won't bother with it. Sure, people can make money off scams. It happens. But you don't always need to take that risk, honestly. So first up, you want to look at what they're offering, So this is kind of like a generic thing because, all ICOs are not scams. Some people stay away from them completely, but not all ICOs are scams. But there's other kind of things like services that are typically scams, like those Bitcoin doublers, scam. Any kind of like Bitcoin multi-level marketing thing is 100% probably going to be a scam. I mean, even like normal multi-level marketing's sketchy as heck. Sketchy as heck. I said that, and I'm gonna have this listed as explicit, even if I don't really curse any time. Whatever. So you just need to really first look at the product. People offering too good to be true solutions, so I guess you should keep that in mind too. But really, just look at what are you trying to get into? That's the first thing you should ever be doing before you put any money forward. Do you actually know what you're putting money into? This is what that all boils down to, that first step. So the first step is, do you know what you're actually putting your money into? The second step is, how much progress has been made into this thing? For some of these services, those web-based scams, yeah, they'll be fully built. But these ICO scams, usually there's nothing. So you got to keep that in mind. Is there a prototype? Is there alpha? Is there something out there that shows that this actually can be worked on, and have real uses? No, not real uses, but does this thing actually work without major flaws? Is there that prototype out there that tells me this is feasible? This is just all theoretical and is going to come crashing down. I mean, there's definitely some things that you can't foresee, and nothing's going to be totally flawless, but if they have some kind of prototype, any major flaws can pretty much identified, and you can tell how feasible something is just from the outline of making something. So, first step, do you know what you're actually buying into? Second step, is there something already there? If not, why isn't there already a prototype? Now, 3 is something a lot of these things start out with initially, but then they start fading away. And that is, do they act professionally? In their typing, and if they do kind of some of them do live streams sometimes, are they professional in that? So what I've noticed is, initially, pretty much they're all professional initially, but as it's melting down, as the time comes where they're trying to get out of it, they start spitting kind of similar rhetoric. It's no, we're working on it. Just don't worry, you gotta join the Slack, we're not gonna update all the time, or No, that's just FUD. It's FUD. Which sometimes people are just fudding and just spreading lies. But how I look at it is when the FUD starts throwing, I think, why are people doing this? Always ask why, and you will probably be able to avoid these scams. So keep in mind, if they're slowly becoming less and less professional, you should probably think about getting out. Next up, number 4 is, what country are they from? Now, I know some people probably will take offense to this, but some countries are obviously more prone to scams than others. I mean, everyone knows like the Nigerian Prince email stuff. But even countries like India or Russia can be a risk. I mean, if someone in the United States tries to scam you, they're 100% going to get it come back on them when there's a formal investigation. Like, they're not getting away with it. And neither will they get away with it in the UK, because the guy who ran Moolah and bought out MintPal from ages ago was from the UK. And sure, it took them like 2 years to get him. 2 to like 3 years to get him. Yeah. Like three-ish years to get him. But they got him. Like, people won't escape in certain countries when they steal a lot of money. But in other countries, they're kind of like less strict about this stuff. It's a lot more possible. So that's something to keep in mind. And the final, number 5. If you don't follow any of these other ones, at least, please, I beg you, follow number 5. Because number 5 is like, number 5 can be number 1, and I can just get rid of everything else. Because number 5, it will just eliminate 90% of these scams. Alright, so number 5 is, do they have any real identification that can be verified? So this last part of it, can be verified, is very important, because people can easily run aliases and make a bunch of fake stuff. But it's hard to like forge fake documents, especially if you have like something proving this person has lived a life and they've existed before this project. If you can prove that, more than likely it's not a scam. They might be incompetent and it fails, but you can't blame them. They tried. See, when you can't identify the person, it's then more than likely they're being sketched and they might run away with the money. I'd say there's exceptions to this when it's an anonymous based kind of currency, like if it was like Monero, but even he's not anonymous. So I guess that still doesn't hold up, especially if it's an ICO. You should definitely 100% do this. Just make sure these people have real identifications if you're giving them money. Because if you're just giving someone money, you have no idea how, like, the credentials behind this person, and if these credentials are real or not, you're just kind of throwing money in just to throw money. So I'll just run back those top 5 tips right now. So know what you're investing in is number 1. Just know what you're getting into. Number 1. Number 2, is there a prototype? Number 3, how professional are they, and does their professionalism degrade? Number 4, what country are they from? And number 5, can you verify their identity? Like I said, if you follow any of these, make sure you follow number 5 at least. But you should be fine for 90% of scams. That there will be a 10% that's a very long con, and it'll be something like, let's say Mount Gox, for example, where sure, there's kind of signs on the wall that the worst can happen, But people aren't really thinking about the worst could happen because they think everything's still going fine. And then it just all melts down and is like, oh no. Everyone just lost tons of money. So this has been episode 10 of the Crypto Spinter podcast. Come see me again. Well, listen to me again every Monday and Thursday. So see you guys around next Monday.